It is now 7:30, and I'd like to call the Light Board meeting for March 13th to order. And first thing is upcoming meetings and minutes. So the next meeting that we have is on March 27th. And Jason is going to be attending his first E&E board meeting that later that morning at 9 o'clock. And I think it would be better for him if we moved our meeting or canceled our meeting. And I wanted to get a sense from the board if they felt this meeting was necessary, and if it is, what time you might want to move it to. Does anyone have opinions on the March 27th meeting time? Because we have another meeting coming up on April 10th. Well,
I defer to you.
yeah, so we do have a lot to do, but I think um, it may make more sense to just wait until the April 10th meeting, because the town meeting happens on later after that. So we'll have time to take a position on any articles that we need to at that meeting.
I see no reason to have March 27th to meet 2 weeks later. I think we can do it without
Okay.
that meeting and meet town meeting deadlines.
Excellent. All right, so we're not meeting on March 27th. Our next meeting will be April 10th. And we did have some meeting minutes to review. Warren, do you want to?
Yes, we had meetings for May 10th. I sent around. Alice sent some good and appropriate edits to them. I didn't circulate those to everyone, but her edits were, you have to trust me, completely non-objectionable. They were clarifications. And a couple folks, Bianca and John, weren't at that meeting anyway. So I'm hoping we could take a vote to approve those meeting minutes for May 10th.
Yeah, I had reviewed them when you sent them around, which was I think like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I didn't send any edits because you have to do something egregious for me to send an edit on a minute. I mean, it's not really what I spend my time on. But I feel ready to move forward. Alice, do you mind making a motion to approve it was the May 2023
Okay.
minute?
Yeah.
I move to approve the minutes from May 2023 as submitted and circulated to the board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, great. A vote for Warren?
Yes.
All right, I'll get a yes from Alice.
Yes, from me.
Thank you. John?
Yes.
Bianca? Do you approve
Yes,
the
sorry.
minute?
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
yes. Sorry.
And I agree as well. So we've approved the minutes for May 10th, 2023. All right. On here is the chair's update, but I don't remember anything specific that the chair needed at this particular meeting. So I am going to move on to Jason's director's update.
Thank you, Brian. So I just want to point everybody to the packet that I posted online over the weekend, and has all the meeting materials. I will update the document, Brian, that was edited after the fact, but we're trying to get the packet out earlier and have it more comprehensive with as much information as we can so that people can be prepared before the meeting. So I continue to meet with all the staff in the light plant, and in addition to the regular meetings with sort of the division managers, and that's going really well, learning a lot about people's jobs, even though I've worked with them for years, just understanding on a personal level what they do and what their thoughts are in the organization has been really helpful. And I just wanted to give an update on sort of the recruitment process. Our plan is to have the town manager, Carrie LaFleur, either attend and discuss or present or relay information on the director's transition. but I wanted to let you guys know what we were doing as a team. So we meet weekly as a team to discuss all sorts of topics, and one of them, high priority, was the director's transition and what our recommendation was there. So we created a survey collaboratively that asked a lot of questions about who we thought should be on the screening committee, sorts of questions that should be asked, what attributes we'd be looking for in a director. And then each division manager filled those surveys out with their team. And then we took all of that data and we put it in kind of a summary report and gave that to the town manager. She was on vacation when we delivered that, so we needed to give her a chance to synthesize it and digest it. But the goal was to try to allow the staff at the light plant to convey sort of their thoughts on what was needed or recommended, so that she had that resource to help her through the process. And so I'm really happy with how that went and just how everybody got to provide input, and we were able to go through a process that was documented and communicated to everybody. So and then I did want to say, just in general, I feel like we're in really good shape. The staff are, highly qualified, bright people, and just doing a great job. And we're definitely under-resourced in some areas and trying to struggle to meet project goals that we've had for a long time. But these people are breaking their backs every day to try to get as much done as possible. And I'm just in awe of what they contribute on a daily basis. Michael Hale from Shrewsbury is still assisting 8 to 10 hours a week and just having a huge impact, able to just jump in because of his extensive knowledge. So I'm very appreciative of Michael's time. He's been sitting with some staff and assisting with some projects, focusing a lot on some solar projects, and has just a huge network of resources. So when we need somebody, he just knows someone. So that's just been great. We're preparing for the enterprise hearing on March 21st. So that's for the Finance Committee's enterprise hearing. The light plant will be presenting, the motion and background knowledge. It's a pretty short presentation. The Finance Committee likes to keep them, just to a few minutes, but it just provides high level, expenses, revenue, projects, what we're kind of doing. Remember that we're on kind of a different fiscal year than the town, so the budgets don't line up perfectly for town meeting, but Matt and his team do a great job at trying to, create something with parity with what the town's fiscal year is. So in the energy management world, you'll probably saw from my update that Concord has over 1,200 electric vehicles registered in town, and we're the second highest community in the Commonwealth in terms of adoption rate for EVs per capita. So that's great to see. I wanted to plug the Climate Action Committee's Green Home Tours. There were 2 dates. One's already passed, but the other one is still available. So March 23rd is when the other one is taking place. And in the packet, there's a link where you can register, fill out a form, and then you can participate and see there's a few different homes there and how they've sort of found ways to increase energy efficiency and electrify. I also created a redirect at concordma.gov/greenhomes. So if you're listening and you're not aware of the packet, you can go to that URL and we'll direct you to the sign up link. I think that's just a great way to show what's possible to the community. For the advanced metering project updates, we're just under like 29.8% of residential meters installed. Team's doing a great job. We have one outside contractor, a team of 2 electricians who are working Monday through Thursday, helping us out with those meters. And then hopefully we're going to be adding a second team very soon. And, with this nice weather and the warm weather, it certainly makes it easy to churn through a lot of meters. So we're seeing, on average, we're over 30 meters per day being installed. We'd love to see that, increase even more. And I think it will once the nice weather comes out, because, really rainy or dangerous days, we obviously can't install meters. I just wanted to mention very briefly that I did write, with Michael's help, a letter of support for a wind project that E&E was aware of and trying to get support for. We felt this is really aligned with Concord's goal of lowering greenhouse gas emissions, and I worked with Carrie to understand the process on that. And her sense, and if anybody thinks differently, please let me know, was that for those things that are clearly in line with our goals as stated in the Climate Action Plan or Envision 2030, that Concord would love to see projects that align with our goals, and that there's really no issue with getting, issuing a letter of support for those. But if there's any projects that we feel like might be anywhere in the middle or be in conflict with our goals, that they would either be brought up for discussion or not be recommended. But in this case, it was very clear, something we'd given support for in the past, and was just a project coming back. So we felt comfortable doing that. The decorative streetlight repair materials have arrived, and those are what we need to do to secure and fasten the decorative streetlight heads that were swinging open and falling. We're waiting to receive the 4 streetlights that were actually fell and damaged, and so they're going to ship us those for free. And once we receive those, we'll schedule time for the team to come from Canada and assist and with oversight on the installation of all that. We are moving forward to purchase a barcode system for the warehouse and inventory. This is something that I think is going to help a lot in terms of the annual inventory process, but also just the daily grind of everything that goes on a truck and everything that comes back off a truck. We have over $2 million of items in our warehouse that we track and are audited every year. And it's a lot of work to make sure that we know what is where and that things are properly stocked and ordered. And the team does a phenomenal job with the tools that they have. But this system is a turnkey system. I think it's under $6,000, comes with training, hardware, software upgrades, and it integrates it. It's part of our ERP system today, and will really enable us to do speedier and more often inventory audits, and also make it easier for people to take things out and put things back into inventory. So I'm excited to move that forward. We continue to monitor what's coming out of the MCI Concord closure conversation. We have staff working on estimates on revenue and rate impacts if their usage drops 50% and if their usage goes away. At this time, it's obviously very early in the process, and even though the state's trying to expedite, there's still a lot of unknowns. But we do anticipate that at some point when they vacate the building in terms of using it as a prison, that their electricity usage will drop, potentially in half. They're going to need to continue to operate a wastewater treatment facility, which is shared with the Northeast Correction Center. So they won't be able to just shut all the lights out there. But we do want to understand that, because I believe it's over $800,000 a year of revenue there. And so basically Laura and others are running this through the Baker Tilly analysis to figure out, what impact this would have on rates, because we'd love to know that. Obviously, this would be a short-term impact because hopefully that area will be developed in some other way. And with further electrification, it may have a similar load profile as it did before. But even if it has, at peak, it uses a similar amount, it probably won't have the same load profile because the prison was such a steady user of electricity. And, they don't have weekends or nights or shut things down. It's pretty much 24/7. So a very even load to depend on. And it was on the side of the bus with the solar saturation. So when this goes away, it will create an even bigger issue there. And I just want to direct people to the League of Women Voters held a terrific First Friday session at the library a few weeks ago. And there was just tons of informative information there with our local reps and state senator, and Megan did a great job presenting, what the town's been doing. So I encourage people to watch that. And then the last thing I have on my director's update is the level 3 chargers at the Rideout. So if you'll remember, we ordered 2 level 3 chargers for the Rideout. This was part of a state grant. These are our first level 3 chargers in Concord. They're made by Flow. That's the company who makes them. They were sold to us by Rexel, the reseller. And we ordered 2 of the same unit, but it was clear when we received them that they were not the same unit, that one of them had a credit card reader and one of them did not. And after the board voted the rates, the last meeting, the meeting before, we've been trying in earnest to set the voted rates on these units and been having just so many problems. We've reached out to Flow support. It's been escalated to the highest levels. And we finally got word back between the last meeting and this meeting that the unit with a credit card reader cannot charge per kilowatt hour per hour of the day. In other words, if we're using a per kilowatt hour charge, it's got to be fixed. Or we can use time of day charging, but it's based on how many minutes you're charging. And so that's not going to be compatible with the board's vote. Now, I have escalated this with the Rexel who sold them to us, and they've escalated this beyond support and more into the engineering at Flow. So I'm hopeful that we'll hear back that maybe there is something that these people haven't been aware of. But we certainly see a conflict here because one unit can have the voted rates and the other unit cannot. So we have to make a decision, or do we have two separate units and try to explain to people why they're different? Do we make them both the same? Can we approximate what the board was trying to do with the time of use per kilowatt hour rates, and turn that into just a per minute fee? So these are the challenges that we're facing right now. And I will say that our goal, ever since we realized kind of what the grant limitations were that we've been planning on after the 1 year mandatory period where we can't alter these chargers, is to go back and modify at least one of them so that they have a Tesla compatible charger. And so we might be able to do something further in December once the 1 year period of installation is up, so that if we need to make a modification in some significant way, that we can do that. Hopefully, again, they come back to us and they say, actually, there is a way, we'll just ship you this board or something. But either way, we're trying to reconcile that, and we are looking for a bit of feedback from the board on this. I know it wasn't a topic, but it's because it came up after we set the agenda. But if anybody has thoughts, we're definitely open to suggestions on how to deal with this in the short term. That's my update.
Oh, great. That was a lot of topics. I was writing little notes, but I just sticking with the level 3 charger. You said that the light plant had ordered 2 identical units, but we've received one with a card reader, one without. Is this the wrong unit was delivered and needs to be rectified?
It's hard because Dave was very involved in this process and he's not here. What we do know is that, it was very clear to our team that when they unboxed these things that they were different, and they definitely raised that issue to Dave. What I don't see is any correspondence from Dave back to the reseller. I imagine there's a lot of phone calls that happened, but I know that we were under a very tight deadline to comply with the grant to get units installed. So what I don't know is if it was just like, well, it's going to take another 6 months to get that an identical unit and they can be essentially the same. I don't really know. That's kind of my best guess as to how we ended up with 2 different units installed. It's just that it's $100,000 grant. If we didn't have the unit installed, then we wouldn't be eligible for the grant. And probably we were told that well, we just ship you a different board or it's a different piece of electronics and you can make it right, but that obviously wasn't correct information.
All right, so so we noticed the error in the delivery, but then we're forced by the deadline to utilize that piece, so we can't quite return it used versus. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to an update on that in the future, because I do want to make sure those units do operate as expected. We've had some early people that really wanted to use those and had some issues. I will go to you, Warren, but I just wanted to ask, with MCI, that is, a big consumer on Sundays in the spring and the fall, I assume. And that is when we hit our solar saturation issues. I wanted to not only ask about, you're looking into the revenue loss of that closure, but I'm wondering if Joe could look into the effects of the load loss on the system. And are we good? Because our substation is not ready to do backfeeding yet, because we have to do some engineering. So are we in real threat of losing that last 2.5 megawatts on that bus that it shuts down? So I would like you to take a look into that engineering side of that problem.
Yes, absolutely. We have talked about that a few times and are looking into that. I mean, I think our backup is to be able to shut down or reduce the solar at the WR Grace site if needed. But obviously, we need to know when the solar saturation happens, and without the SCADA system, that can be a challenge. But we're absolutely looking at that and trying to figure out how we can understand the impacts of that on the operations.
Yeah, but even doing a dry run of the curtailment
Right.
process, we haven't done that before, and so it'd be good to make sure it works as theorized. Warren, you go ahead. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, on the chargers, I don't see that it would be a problem to switch them both to a rate by minute, as long as you can do a different rate at different times of the day. I mean, that's something that folks with EVs are familiar with. Lots of chargers do it by minute, so personally, I don't see that being a big problem.
Yeah. I would like to see both chargers having the same rate. Because they're right at one moment, one of them had the approved rate, the other one had
Right.
augmented rate. Also, you had in your update mentioned that you provided a letter of support for a wind project. I feel that's appropriate, and the follow-up telling the board that it was done is appropriate, because I know some of those things are time sensitive.
Right.
So I think you handled it appropriately. I think if the only time I could think of E&E saying that a project was clean energy when this board disagreed would be the biomass plant.
Biomass, right.
Yeah.
This is a wind project too.
And if you had gone ahead and supported the biomass with a letter, we could do some kind of letter saying that, we have concerns. It's not as strong through, as a follow-up. So I think
Yeah,
that's a fine process.
Yep, I'm aware. And again, we were just looking at the climate action plan and other things. So, and it had been supported before this particular project.
Right. I'm very excited to see 800 BEV, full electric cars, and over 1,200 in total with plugs. That's great. The green home tours, I did go to one of the home tours. They're interesting. They're fun to see what other people have done. And you find a lot of customers that are, considering these things and have some of the same, kind of first timer questions, and you see how other people answer them. It's interesting. The street light fix is great. That's moving forward. Yeah, that's all my comments. Does any other board member have any questions or follow-up on the update? I don't see any. I did read something, where was it? Shoot. Are we doing a middle school update later in the agenda? Yes, we are. So I'm going to hold it for then. All right. Next on the agenda is the broadband update. So we go back to Jason.
You're gonna get sick of me. I
Never.
just have a couple updates today. So you saw in the packet, our network engineer has left to pursue other ventures, which is leaving us with 0 network engineers, not a position that we want to be in. So that means that I and our broadband manager, Dale, are acting as network engineer in our spare time. And luckily, we do have 2 third parties that are entwined with our operations and able to step in to assist with some of these things. We do have obviously tons of monitoring capability, so it's not like people aren't checking things. It's more just this is more going to impact projects and rollout of upgrades and things. But the good news is that Dale has over 30 years of network experience, so he's very capable of handling this. But we want to be in a situation where we have enough resources, and that's clearly not the case. So we are looking at a managed services model as sort of a backup for continuity, so that we have a team who's sort of on standby. That's what we are able to do in these periods, if somebody's on vacation or if we don't feel like we're under-resourced. But it's not 24/7, 365. And so we've actually reached out and got quotes on that, and we're kind of going through the procurement process to understand what the impact would be, to see if maybe we want 1 permanent network engineer and then some managed services, or just a different model. So we're exploring that. We also have some good news with a past employee who is just absolutely phenomenal, who is between gigs right now, and might be able to come back in a short-term capacity for a few months, which would give us able to step back and take a deep breath. So that's good to hear. But again, this is something that we've had this job, a second position open since August of 2022. And we have just had a really difficult time recruiting for this. We are in direct competition with the private sector for network engineers. Most network engineers work fully remotely. We obviously need somebody who can be on site for data centers, for customers. And we also are competing with salaries and 401ks and bonuses and things that none of which the town does. So we did hire, we had a verbal offer exception from one person. We had another person who actually started and worked just a few weeks and then got an offer for a salary that was maybe 30 or 40% higher than what we were offering, and loved working with us, but just had to go. So it's just a really challenging niche to find somebody who has the skills, who wants to be on site, and who is passionate about this. We found them in the past. We know they're out there. It's just harder, and the recruitment services that we have are not as robust as some private sector companies. We have used recruiters, external recruiters. Unfortunately, the people they bring us are making, almost double of what the role pays. So it's just been a challenge. So we're looking at all of our options, and Carrie is aware of the challenges here, and she's doing a lot to help support us. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that on February 23rd, we conducted a maintenance window for broadband. And this was our kind of big annual maintenance window where we upgrade everything, every ONT in every customer home, every piece of equipment on our end is updated. And we had a dual motivation this year. One, we do it annually anyway, just for security reasons. But two, we were able to now connect an operations cloud product that our vendor Calix makes. And what this does, it does a whole bunch of things, but basically we have a support cloud where our third-party help desk, Integrity, provides support for end users, and it gives them some basic information about, like, can I reboot a device? Is the device up or down? But that's kind of all it gives. What this now does is it's reporting metrics from all the devices, and so they can better troubleshoot end users and have fewer truck rolls to solve problems that could be solved by our tier 1 and tier 2 remote support that we pay for. Another thing it does is give us a live outage map. So every time we have a broadband outage today, we're grabbing alarms from one system, we're putting it in another system, we're then taking that out from there and then creating a map that we can use and share with other teams. And that's just time that we spend when we could be working on restoration efforts or better coordinating with other people. So this is real time, has an integrated outage or incident map. We also have just a ton of other features about utilization. So, for example, when you subscribe to Comcast, they over provision a certain line by a certain percent. In other words, they know that not all the people on a certain circuit can get the delivered speeds that they expect. We try not to do that. Our goal is to have a much lower over provisioning threshold so that people are always getting the speeds that they pay for at any time of the day. And so that means that right now we're doing a lot of manual processes to make sure that that's happening. And, we obviously do it when we onboard a new customer. It's really required, but it's not being periodically reviewed today. So in other words, if you had 10 people sharing a circuit and they all were on kind of a low speed, but over time, people move up a little bit, maybe other people are added to the circuit, and then it gets oversaturated. And so this now gives us alerts, alarms, and gives us information in real time as to when you hit those thresholds. And then just the last thing I'll mention is that today we get alarms when anything goes wrong, but that means anytime you reboot your router, anytime you unplug it to dust the cabin, and anytime you do anything, that creates an alarm. And so people are conditioned to ignore sort of the one-off alarms. But obviously when 100 devices go offline, we know there's been a serious issue. But what happens when maybe 3 devices or 4 devices go offline at the same moment? This new system will allow us to create custom alerts so that we can basically say, if 3 ONTs go offline in this period of 10 seconds, we know that that's an issue that we need to look into. So, obviously if we get 10, 20, 100 or whatever, but it's going to allow us to be more proactive and reach out to customers and also let them know that we know that there's a problem. So that means we have 2 of the 3 cloud offerings. The last one is a marketing cloud, but that's really not the right term. It's not really just for marketing and trying to get sales. It's also customer outreach and communication. So one example is, if you have an outage today and you're in the National Grid or Eversource territory, and you have an outage, they might send you a message and say, hey, we know your power's out, or we know your system is down, or whatever, and we're working on it, and this is what we're doing to fix it. With that third product, we could do something like that. So we're looking at that down the road. We wanted to kind of study what we had for a while before we implement it, but we think that would be a great tool to be able to message to people like, hey, there's a power outage right now and your broadband is out. We know about it. We're working on it. And here's where you can find information. It saves people from having to call or stress about, how do I report this or where do I go? And it's just good communication. So I'm really grateful for Dale's help, our broadband manager's help on all the upgrades that he performed in the middle of the night and all the preparation that he did. He's a top level preparer. So things are tested and validated before anything is done. Everything is documented. And I'm just so happy to have somebody on our team who values those things because it really increases the stability and security of the network. So that's all I have for my updates.
Great, thank you. I have a concern, which is you listed yourself as someone to back up the lack of this engineer. And though you are fully capable of that, you are, still leading broadband, you're doing IT for the town, and you're, filling the interim director for the light plant. I don't think there's more of you to go around. So, I know we're trying to fill a position, and we've been trying to fill it since the, August or the summer of 22, and it's a very competitive market, and we're under, I think we're under salary, the salary isn't competitive with the market. I know changing that salary target for that position requires a lot of town logistics. So is there a way to hire someone as an independent contractor to get somebody here, on site to do that role at a rate that we can get someone, and have that a yearly renewed contract until we figure out the permanent positions, and maybe that person could go into that position. But I'm just thinking of
Right.
other ways to get the personnel here for those 2 roles that are open now.
Yeah, we've absolutely explored that. And, I think initially the problem we had was that we're looking at, around $150 to $200 an hour for those contractors. And that's because they don't normally have to go on site. And that creates a little bit of an equity issue because we had an existing network engineer. So we'd have one employee making a third or quarter of that, and another one who's a contractor making 3 to 4 times that. It's a problem. So right now we don't have a person, so that problem isn't there. One solution that we have that we've been pursuing recently is that when class and comp was done, we did create a senior network engineer position, which has a little bit higher of a range. But you'll have to remember that even if the range exists and is appropriate, with the class and comp, the expectation is that people are going to be starting in the first half of the range. So we're limited both in theory by the range on paper, but also by where we can start people within the range, which is, kind of an internal equity conversation with HR. But even if we could max somebody out in the range, that creates other issues with maybe supervisors who make less than that today. So, I will say that this is not just a problem with broadband or the network engineer. This is a problem across the light plant in terms of salaries and being competitive with other MLPs. We're one of only 2 municipalities that has the exact same structure with our light plant, with the town manager as the general manager of the light plant and everybody underneath it. So that just is always going to create, unfair competition from other MLPs that don't have that structure limitation.
Yeah, I had recently seen a news segment about millennials and the younger generation going for government jobs because of the security, but they're taking an average of a 22% pay cut to do so. But they don't go with all the tech swings of major layoffs and other problems like that. So there's there's soft benefits to working for local government that we need to promote because we can't compete with salaries that are 3 and 4 times what we're currently paying. Alice, your thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to offer that I think it's an appropriate role for the board to serve as an advocate for the staffing and finance needs for the light plant. You know, I'm not convinced that us meeting once a month will solve your problem about how to hire a network engineer at the right salary. But I do think it is the board's ability to serve as your ambassador, to serve as your advocate where needed. I know you have access to everything you need in town, but sometimes these outside consultants whose job it has been for, you know, and is for 6 years when we sign up for it, can be used to actually forward the mission of why it's so important that we do this. So I'm putting it out there that I appreciate Brian's suggestions on how you can solve your problem. I don't think that's our best value that we can add for you, I'd rather see us in a position where we advocate for what you actually need in the places where you think it'd be beneficial. That's just my suggestion.
Yes, that's great, Alice. Bianca, your thoughts? Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, so I wanted to, I concur with some of the, I mean, the short-term fix, maybe a consultant, but I concur with Alice too, that I think we could do a better job of, you know, lobbying for higher salaries. I think one of the, and Brian, you mentioned that, you know, millennials are going for government jobs with a 22% cut, and that sounds great. But what I heard Jason say is that Concord Light is about 30 to 40% below where other MLPs are at. So it's like, it's not just going for a government job. We're not offering the average government level salary. So if we are way below the competition relative to other MLPs, that's a big problem, because at some point, if we don't act fast, we're going to not have anybody, you know, and at the point of trying to restaff an entire light plant, I mean, you know, that's a really big problem. So I think we should definitely push for getting Concord Light, you know, to be comparable with the with other MLPs. I think, you know, that seems like a slam dunk thing that the board can do.
Yeah, Jason, can you, I'd like to put as a future topic, discussion of salaries that may require an executive session, but I think we need to inform the board of analysis done to date on setting compensation levels so that we do fill these positions. That sounds to me like a lot of work on you to organize that, but I think maybe not for the April meeting, but maybe the June or July meeting we'll have a focus on that.
Yeah, no, I think that would be, it's time well spent, so I'm happy to prepare for that.
Great. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are similar to what we've heard from Alice and Bianca. I do feel, and I think your idea, Brian's a good one, that this is an area that really warrants further consideration by the board, and would actually look to Alice because she has a better understanding in terms of, based on her time on the select board, is how we as a board can potentially, you know, influence things or work with the town to address this really important issue, because I share the concerns that other board members are voicing, that I really feel like there's a major risk here, because I think this is a situation that's only going to get worse, and I feel like we're seeing it now evident with respect to on the fiber side, but I think it's also a real risk that we confront with respect to kind of the more traditional functions at the light plant.
Yeah, I agree. I know that previously we've been very resistant to add new positions, and I'm hearing from Jason that, you know, he's learning from staff what they do day to day, and they're working really hard, and they're they're taxed in their resources to meet the requests that are coming their way. So the number of staff and the level of compensation is important to retain the people that make this place function. So, and I believe there was I remember there was a study about a year ago that Dave had done with HR related to the utility side. So maybe that will give you something to start with.
Yeah, I was part of that, so I'm very familiar with it.
Okay, great. I before we move on from the broadband update, the marketing part of the cloud, I would love to see a good CRM, a customer resource management database
Mhm.
for quick communication with our customers. It could be broadband outages, it could be, electricity outages, but it could also be things like, when we experience our peaks and getting communication out about, high moments of expense, and critical peak pricing or other kind of reactionary demand response. So having that would be a very good function. I don't think we have a comprehensive customer database and way to communicate with them by text or by email, not just by mail.
Yeah, we have resources, but you're right, they're not all integrated. There's kind of different places for different things. But I just had this conversation with Carol last week, and the desire to emulate what other people are doing really well, which is to get information quickly into customers' hands so that they are aware of what's going on. And even if it's just kind of ignored, it makes people feel safer, more comfortable, that they know that people are looking out for things, being prepared for storms. All of those things just make people, give them a peace of mind that we're doing our jobs and being ready for everything.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're ready to move on to the renewable energy credit policy. And I guess I will take this. It is in your packet, starting on page 16. And I got feedback from almost all of you, and so it's been well reviewed by all of you. I did incorporate Warren's questions into the update that's in the updated packet. And I got some feedback from John, and I want to go over that quickly. So John's feedback said that in the policy statement that it assumed that the energy charge would over collect. And he was unsure if it needed to have a way to say if we had a negative balance, what would we do? The estimating that's later on in the document uses the ACP to set the collection. So we can be pretty assured that if that method is used, that we're going to be targeting a 40 cent per kilowatt collection. And so in that case, you'd almost always have a return to customers, which could be in the form, instead of the alternative compliance payment, it could also just be set in the rates going forward in the next year. So I'm not concerned about that. There's a statement in that he pointed out that says we cannot contract for 100%. I can change that word of cannot or elects not to contract for 100%, because there is no barrier to doing so, but it just doesn't make financial sense. So I can make the word change from cannot contract 100% to elects not to contract to 100%. And your final question was, not sure I agree. Do we need this about replacement portion of the event of an outage? Oh, so there's a section that both Warren and John commented on, which was about losing a generator. I put that in there to talk about why we don't, why a diverse mix of contracts needs to be done and we don't become all nuclear or all one form of energy. So it was really, it was just a highlighting the example of why we need diversity. But I didn't, do you really have a strong concern about that, John?
I guess I was offering replacement language, Brian, to try to be a little less technical, so and make it more apparent. I mean, I totally agree with your point, but I was just offering alternative language. I think you were talking about kind of the day ahead market, and I just tried to make it be a little more general statement. But I think we're in agreement in terms of the underlying concept and point to be made.
All right, so I think, because I would like to try to get this approved today, because it has been on our agenda a few times in the past, and I'd like to get it done. So I don't think I'm gonna make any language changes just for getting this accomplished today. But I do want to hear from everyone before we move forward with that. Laura, you have a question.
Yep, give me just 1 second here.
Sure.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm not sure what's blocking that. Well, you don't really need to see me. Okay, so my only concern is if we set the renewable energy charge at the alternative compliance payment, I'm afraid we're going to way over collect because we don't need to buy. So the renewable energy charge is applied to the full number of sales. Let's say it's 163 million kilowatt hours that we sell. So we collect right now like 2 cents on that, right? So that's $3.4 million.
Mhm. So if you read the section on the estimating,
Yep.
it focuses on the non-bundled need. So it takes sales times the percent remaining emitting after we have our bundled contracts, and then uses the ACP. So, for example, in 2024, using the ACP of 4 cents, the actual collection across all sales would actually be 1.5 cents using the estimating tool.
Okay. But did we keep the language? I thought we lifted the language from the administration of the policy and put that up front.
Yes, the policy statement is at the beginning.
Okay, so that talks about how the calculation of the renewable energy charge collection will be done. And it talks about multiplying it by all sales. So there might be a little conflict there.
All right. I didn't want to get into wordsmithing, but if that exists, it does need to be fixed. Can we agree that we will review that language and adjust it to the estimating tool listed in the bottom? Because this method is basically making sure that we collect for an appropriate amount based on buying stuff at $40 a megawatt.
Right.
So it's a more accurate process than just applying a number across the entire purchases, because we've already got certificates for a majority of our bundled contracts.
Yep. I mean, the idea in the other one was just that the board, I think it said specifically the board sets the rate. So presumably like in the normal annual budgeting process, we could go through the same calculation that you're talking about in the top and come up with the appropriate to apply to all sales that would back into what was needed for the unbundled. The same process, it's just a different way of doing it. It just, as long as it's consistent, I don't think it matters.
Okay, we'll just make sure it's consistent.
Yeah, okay.
But we're both saying the same thing, which is good. Any other board questions on this? Yes, Alice.
I guess, Laura, I'd like to hear, if you wouldn't mind, your general opinion on the direction of this policy. Is your opinion that the policy is needed and that this meets the needs of both the light plant and our interest in 100% renewable power? Does this meet the objective? I feel like I'm not good enough at doing the calculations and determining from this the right rate structure for it. So I'm asking Laura whether this is the right document for what we're trying to do right now.
So it's hard for me to answer that, Alice, because I feel like this document is trying to accomplish many different things, some of which are policies and procedures that would normally be promulgated by the CMLP staff, and some of which are policy statements that are more appropriately coming from the board. So like when the board has created, renewable energy strategies and stuff in the past, it's been a board document. It's something that the board members say, hey, this is the direction we want to take the light plant. Some of the other more detailed stuff is really, once the board has said what direction they want to go in, how is the light plant going to, make that happen in its day-to-day operations? So I really can't speak to the policy-making part of it. That has to come from you. For me, it's too much for what we would normally put in a staff level, policy implementation procedure document. But it's trying to accomplish many things, I think. So, yeah.
This is
Well,
one
I
of
think that's
those.
what my question was about, really, is that are we getting too deep in the weeds of the operational decisions made by the light plant rather than being the policy setting structure of the light plant board? And there's a difference there. That we allow the staff to do their job to figure out how best to meet the objectives of the policy board and not get into the weed. I know I can see Brian, I see it all moving.
So I'm just a little frustrated because this started with a request to create the policy. And then when the policy was created, the board asked for more detail. And it's just now we're going back to, do we need this? Well, I'd like my time back. I mean, this is what was requested.
I don't, maybe I'm at fault. I don't remember requesting this level of detail for how we would implement a policy decision of the board, which was to develop a rec policy.
Well, the concern, it wasn't your request for this level of detail. It
I'm a
was
board member. You said the board, I'm a board
Well,
member.
Well, it's the Groundhog Day effect. There was a request that this document contain more information to inform future board members of not only what the policy is, but why we did the policy.
Yeah, I will second Brian on that. It's just that the thing is the bigger problem is that when policies are implemented, oftentimes there's no background, there's no detail about the background, the purpose, or the how it's calculated. So when we have that, I think it makes it more clear both for all of us to then have a document to refer to if there's any questions. And then also for incoming board members to be able to say like, oh, okay, I get that. And this is how it's calculated. I understand now. If it's something to where, there's a problem with the calculation or, there's a disagreement with how it's calculated, then this would be the time to talk about it. But I think I would say that, Alice, you're right. Maybe it's a lot of information that, normally is done by the staff, but I think it's a document. I would say it's a document that I personally found to be very useful, especially as a new board member to have background and reference.
Yeah. Warren, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't want to revisit this whole document in part because we've gone down the path pretty well. And I think in general, the document has useful information, is non-objectionable. I would say we should put a sentence in somewhere that says something to the effect, the staff may make minor adjustments to the provisions in this document in order to implement it smoothly to the best needs of the staff, or something like that, that gives the staff a little wiggle room without throwing the whole document out.
Yeah, that's, yeah, it isn't specific in the document, but that's definitely the way that it should be handled. I mean, this is a policy document, but it's not, it's easily amendable in the future. This is not something that should be written in stone that forces people to do the wrong thing. I think coming back to the board and discussing it would make sense. John,
Yeah, it seems to me that the source of tension here is, the prescriptiveness with respect to applying the ACP to the, the specific quantity of emitting generation. And, it's kind of goes to Warren's point, I think, that, right now, I think the ACP is probably a, reasonable estimate to use for that calculation. But I think in the future, as the rec market changes, it would be appropriate, and it doesn't necessarily need to come back to the board, but it'd be appropriate for the staff to say, okay, where the rec market is today, a price of $30 is more appropriate than the 40 that the ACP represents. So I think that
well, this
This-
is really a document of what we're doing already. So that's the tricky thing, is this board, it's trying to capture what we've already decided since, 2016 to now, and how this process of providing clean energy happens for customers. So the estimation is just an explanation of what has been going on. So I don't think we're not creating anything new in this document. We're documenting what's going on so that we have a policy and future board members understand why we have that policy. And this can be amended by any board in the future. So I put 10 minutes on the schedule because I thought this was going to be something, because this is the fourth time we've seen this document. I think we've got to make a decision at some point on something that's good enough. Am I reading concern from board members that they don't want to support this because they're unsure, or for other reasons? Or is this, are we trying to make things perfect and getting lost in the process? I can't tell if I have real concerns or if I have just wanting to get it the best that we can.
So let me just say, I think it's fine, but my sense about a policy statement sets a future goal and direction for whatever it is that we're trying to address. This is a very good historical document, and it puts a big context. It is, to me, it's not well, maybe you can tell me what is the policy statement in this. I'm looking at this being a very good historical summary of how we got to where we are and the costs associated with it. I don't want to belabor the point.
So
It's
Alice,
a good summary. I like it.
so the 3 paragraphs under Renewable Energy Certificate Administration Policy is written by Laura as the first policy that was written down and provided to the board. When that 3 paragraphs was provided to the board, it didn't provide enough context or information about why that policy exists. So that's why it's such a long document, is to answer that question. Do you feel that those 3 paragraphs were the policy statement you were
I
looking
do.
for?
So that I wanted to make sure that we all knew what that's the purpose of this policy statement, which a policy is,
Mhm.
the 3 paragraphs. So we all agree on that. The rest is background
Yes.
and context. I would just, for my purposes, I would like to see just that call out, instead of it going on how to measure progress, have all the data. It's all good data for anyone who wants to get into the deep weeds of it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the
that,
policy statement stands, and the rest of it is the background to the policy, so that anyone asking, how the heck did you come up with this policy? There's a record of, from 2006 on,
right.
what was done that got us to this point. But it's
So,
not part of the policy, it's the background, it's our history.
correct. And when the board first saw those 3 paragraphs, that was the request. We needed background and so that's what created this. So would you be willing to move forward and make a motion to approve this?
My recommendation would be one very small edit, which would be to have a heading before how to measure progress that says background and context. So we know that we have a policy statement, and then all the rest is supporting since 2006, data, decisions, progress. But I'm not gonna go to the mountain on this one, so I'm.
You're already there.
Mhm.
So,
I know you get frustrated when you're challenged, Brian, and I'm very sorry. I look at this and I'm trying to look at the bigger perspective of how a non
I get
utility
frustrated with-
plant director or board can read this, and a general person can understand what the policy is and how we got there.
Yeah, I do get frustrated because I am trying to knock things off of our discussion
I
list.
know.
And things like wordsmithing, I ask for over email and I don't get feedback. And now I get feedback as we're trying to approve it. So, all right. Can you send me your suggestions by email, Alice, so that I can come back?
It's a very simple one. I'm happy to put it in writing.
That'd be great. Just so that I have it when we're done. Warren?
So well, I mean, it seemed like the suggestion Alice was making was very small.
Yes.
We could conceivably do it now, and I don't know, Brian, if you'd have any objection to it. Would you just putting a subhead in that just says background and context?
Yeah,
And
I
then
can,
everything else stays the same.
if so, the changes that I've heard are highlighting background and purpose to make it clear, differentiate the policy versus the background, and also changing can't contract to 100% to elects not to contract to 100%. With those 2 edits, would the board be willing to move forward and approve this? I got 1 thumbs up.
I see a lot of thumbs up.
Great. All right, can someone make a motion that approves this with those 2 edits?
I'll make a motion that the board approve the policy and background document as presented with 2 changes to make. One is to add in a subheading that says background and context. And secondly, to make a change that says elects not to contract for all power.
Excellent. Do I have a second?
Second,
Great. Bianca,
Yes.
Alice,
yes.
John,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
and I agree as well. Great. I will make those changes and send out the updated PDF. All right, we are running late. All right, so donate your rec program update. Jason, how would you like to proceed with that?
I am going to share my screen. And in the board's packet, we prepared a document here that summarizes kind of the background, the goal, the program that we foresee, and then how we would like to implement that. It's very simple. I will go very quickly through this since we've talked about it a couple times and this has been in the packet, but there are basically solar customers who are minting RECs that they're no longer being compensated for because they generate too few for an aggregator to be incentivized to purchase them. So those RECs are going nowhere. CMLP buys RECs every year to offset greenhouse gas emitting power sources. So the thinking here is that a person could elect to give the RECs that they donate to CMLP. CMLP could give them a small amount of money, far less than the actual street value of the REC because of program costs and administration costs, and because it's otherwise would go unused. So the goal was to come up with a value, and we found that a monthly rate was going to be easier than a lump sum annually. So we came up with a $9 a month credit, regardless of the size of the array. So, obviously if you mint a lot more RECs, you're not getting as much per REC. If you mint a lot fewer RECs, you're getting more. But this is an easy way to administer a program to not require complicated math, look at load. The way that this is actually done is in the AnyPool GIS system, which is a way to track these things. And E&E has access to that system. And so the process would be somebody would elect to donate. We would then change the owner in the GIS system, and then we would give them this $9 a month credit. We talked to council about how best to implement this program and this credit, and her strong recommendation was to actually use a rate. So we won't be voting on the rate today because we need to have a rate hearing to change or create rates. And we were looking for guidance on a sort of a contract or an agreement on how to do that. And she came up with a lot of good reasons why, in this case, a rate would be better than some other mechanism to issue credit. What happens if you have a zero bill and you give a credit, things like that. So, and then it also protects us from people complaining that, oh, I don't get as much, or, I have a bigger solar array, whatever. So it solves those problems. So we have, Carol has created some wonderful flyers and marketing materials. Brian has given some feedback on. So we have our billing system all ready to accommodate these requests so that we can flip people over to this rate and start giving them the $9 a month credit. We've already worked with E&E to identify the customers who are eligible. We will be able to market to them directly to send them either direct mail or electronic blasts or flyers or whatever. So we'll be able to at least let people know about this who are actually eligible. And then once people opt into the rates, then they will get the $9 a month credit and we make the change. We kind of have a spreadsheet tracking system ready to go for that. And we'll basically take all of the eligible customers, and we have a real-time kind of sharing with E&E. Once we flip somebody to the status of, elected the rate, then they'll get a notification. They'll be able to go in, make the change, and then update the spreadsheet or the database. And then we'll know that that's where they're at, and we can track adoption rate and everything else. So what we're looking for today is just simply that the board bless this plan. And if so, then we will come back and prepare a rate hearing, which we have potentially 3 rate hearings that we need as a result of this meeting, and we'll go into the others, but this is one of them. And so that's kind of the background. So Brian, I guess I'll let you kind of see if the board is ready to make a decision on this program.
Yes, I think this is great work on standing up this program and figuring out the details. You had said we would change the in the AnyPool GIS the array to be owned by CMLP. It's actually, we would change the aggregator to CMLP.
Yes.
Just a wording thing.
Yep.
The only question I had was compliance. Could we add into this document that on an annual basis, we would make the effort to go into the GIS system and make sure that a customer that has an array is actually producing RECs? Just verify that they're actually submitting each year their RECs, because someone could stop reporting, someone could have taken down their array, and there's no way to verify that they are doing what they say they're doing to provide the credit.
Absolutely. Yep. And that was something that we talked about. I apologize for not having that in there, but we assumed that we'd do some sort of compliance to make sure that we do that. But so I'll absolutely add it to the document. So
That'd be great.
consider that part of this.
Any other board questions about this program before we give it a nod and bless it for a future rate hearing? I see none. So I think that's your blessing.
Sounds good.
Lack of objection is the same as being blessed. All right. I guess we're going to move on to the middle school solar update.
Yeah. Let's find that in my notes. So first of all, super exciting project. I'm just really happy to be involved in this, and very excited for what this will mean for the community and for CMLP to get our hands wet with a project like this. It's very complicated. It's involving a lot of staff time and resources, but there's some, like, as I mentioned, some very amazing people here who are doing everything they can to keep this moving. Michael Hale has been working with us on this project as well, and just kind of bounce ideas off of it. One thing that was clear to me attending some of the weekly planning and construction meetings was that we were in the place of being kind of reactive. When somebody needed something, we were providing it, and that's fine. Like, things are getting done and moving forward, but SDA was spending a lot of time working on generating drawings and finalizing design. But they weren't really acting in a capacity as a project manager for us. So there's an OPM for the entire middle school project. But remember that the middle school project is separate from the solar. The solar is ours. So from their perspective, like, yes, it's great for them, but this kind of feels like a train moving down the tracks and somebody's trying to install mirrors on it while it's moving. We're kind of ancillary to the project from their perspective. They want to obviously make sure that they get everything lined up. But it's not Hill's job, the OPM for the middle school project, to make sure that we at the Light Plan are doing everything that we need to do to keep this project moving forward as quickly as possible. And the delays and the risk on this are very high, or the capacity for delay and the risk is very high. And so I thought that it would be really important to have our own project manager. And we looked at our internal staff, and we have two very competent people who could do that, but again, they lack the resources to be able to spend the adequate time and prioritize on this. So I asked Michael if he knew anybody who could serve as an internal OPM as a contractor, and we found this just terrific person. Her name is Mary Bolso. She works with DCAM a lot. She has her own private practice as an OPM, and she worked with a couple firms for many years. She's LEED certified. She's highly recommended, does excellent work. She knows school building projects. She knows solar projects. She knows the energy sector. She just is exactly the person that we need at the right time. And so we're going to be bringing her on board to attend some of the meetings, the construction planning and design meetings, and also integrate with SDA, our Solar Design Associates, who's doing the array planning and the battery planning. Also connect her with SMMA, the architects and designers for the school project, with CTA, the construction company. And she'll be able to hold their feet to the fire. Because what we're doing is, like, when they ask us for something, our staff are doing a really good job at turning that around quickly. But if they're not asking for the right things at the right time, then there is time wasted, And so what we need is somebody who's going to be able to have their finger on the pulse of all of that and make sure that people are asking the right questions at the right time, and they're thinking far enough down the road to get the things that we need to give them, so that they can incorporate that into their construction and design. So she understands exactly what we need and is able to hit the ground running. So I'm hopeful that in the next week or two we can get her fully on board. She's super excited about the project and has already asked a ton of questions about it, and I think that's going to help. So where we are today. So there's a couple things going on. Number one, town council was asked to prepare the variance request for the ZBA to allow us to put some of the canopies in the setback. So there's a 40-foot setback required from the street, and some of our arrays and foundations go into about 15 feet of that 40 feet. So it's not a lot. And Elizabeth Hughes, our town planner, has no reason to believe that this will be a problem. So it's just, we need to go through the process. Council recommended originally that the school apply for the variance as their property, and they're the ones doing the construction. But on the 29th, which was one day before which was the deadline for us filing the variance, they said, well, actually, we think that CMLP should apply for the variance. And they gave us a bunch of information that needed to be vetted and was incomplete. So we got that information. We worked with the town planner and the building commissioner to get the application ready. The deadline for the application for the April meeting is the end of March. So our goal is in the next week to make sure that the building commissioner has everything that he needs to make a recommendation to put this on the ZBA's agenda for the April meeting. And then we assume that that will be approved, and that will allow SDA to have the 100% drawings for the canopy sort of area. It's not holding up any of the other parts of the projects that they're working on, but it would allow them to know with 100% certainty that the design as issued today would be able to move forward. So Joe, our assistant director, Jeff, our lead engineer, and all of Joe's team are continuing to work with SDA on getting the 100% drawings. A lot of that right now, the work is on the switchboard design. So, you know, it's a very complicated system to take the battery, the solar, and the line power from the system to make sure that everything is working appropriately and is tied in a good manner. And that requires a vault where all this equipment is going to be housed, and the vault has conduit coming into it. So, you know, and that is something that needs to happen early on in the building process, which essentially now or in the next few months. So where we are is that PLM is the company that we're working with to design the vault and the switchboard. And, you know, they can design it pretty quickly. Once SDA communicates the needs for the solar, the battery, everything else, that, you know, they can figure out the gauge wire, how we're going to tie all these things together. But then the next piece is figuring out what we can procure and get in a reasonable amount of time. So what we might find is that PLM's design is something that's 18 months to 2 years down the road. So there might be modifications they can make so that we can get things that are in stock or much quicker delivery times. So that's the process that we're in now. Is basically we have the requirements, we're massaging those against what suppliers and resellers have, so that we can get something done that's safe, that meets all of our needs, and that can be done in a timely manner. So we're kind of past the first two, and now we're trying to work on the procurement piece, which is to say getting all of these things that can be done, but in a timely manner. So that's where we're at now. Design. I think that I'll stop there. I know we're very behind with time, but high level, that's where we're at.
That's a great update. And I think that the Mary being added to the team will help give a focus on getting this done right. She is doing the project management. How does the bid process fit in for the installer? Because SDA is not doing the install, but they are looking at supply chain availability for these components. So they're assessing the supply chain for others to bid on. So they will spec materials that they feel that are available, but the bidders will have to go out and get them.
Right.
Okay. All right. More on that later, I assume.
Yes, well, I'll continue to provide updates, and even if it's not a dedicated, you know, agenda topic, I'll definitely include it in my director's updates, and we'll try to get some more information out just to the public in general. I've had conversations with Mark Howell and others about just the need to make sure that we're allocating as many resources as we can to this, and just knowing the limitations we have of staff today to get their normal full-time jobs done and make sure things are safe and everything is resilient. So yeah, I feel like this is going to be a huge help for us and take some pressure off of some people that have a lot of really important things to do, and also just, you know, be proactive to a level that we could never have the capability of today with what we have going on.
Yeah. All right. Is there any other questions from the board about this project before I move on? I don't see any. So let's go to Affordable Connectivity Program Future. Jason.
Thank you. Just trying to switch my slideshow here. Okay, So Zoom. All right, can everybody see this?
Yes.
To confuse matters, we know that ACP is used in two different contexts. We're speaking of the Affordable Connectivity Program. This presentation is in your packet. In the interest of time, I'm going to go through this, the background pretty quickly so we can talk about what we'd like to do. So be able to click. The Affordable Connectivity Program basically gives a subsidy of up to $30 per month for high-speed internet for those people who are eligible. And the criteria you can find out, on their website. This was launched with money from the bipartisan infrastructure law, and it replaced some older programs that were out there. You can see some of the eligibility of who is eligible. So when we went to modify rates or speeds rather in January of 2023, there was a need and a request from the board and the public to say, what are we doing for those people that are having a challenge paying for broadband? And we were asked to consider, either a subsidy or trying to find some way to help people out. We found the ACP program. We thought it was a great fit for us and would, help customers out who qualified. So we applied to the program. We're accepted in March of last year. We actually only had a handful of customers inquire, apply. We also didn't really market this a lot because we had so many struggles to meet the requirements of the program. So some of the challenges that we found were, first of all, we have an electric rate assistance program today for electric customers. It uses different criteria. It's a different application. So that means that if you qualify for both, you're actually having to every year re-up into two separate programs. So that's kind of a heavy lift for the people. Staff have to report monthly and annually on a lot of different data points for the people who are enrolled in the ACP. And if you don't return that information, the people get kicked out of the program. So if staff are busy and are supposed to file something to say that this person did this or was enrolled in that, then the person could get kicked out and they would lose their standing. And it was a huge lift for us for a very small number of people. We were doing it and able to do whatever we needed to get it done to allow people to apply. But we were talking to some of our peers and other MLPs and just hearing the same thing, that they found this project very burdensome for these smaller groups of people. If you have hundreds or thousands of people, then you have separate systems and staff that deal with that exclusively. Sort of the big players like the Comcast and Verizons, for them, this is a marketing, strategy to say, look, we get really low rates because you can get $30 credit. And so they really like the incentive, maybe for a different reason, but we are looking at it from an equity perspective and trying to do what's right for the people in town that need internet. It really is a utility these days. You can't really participate in school or work without an internet connection at home. So those are the challenges that we're facing. And then the FCC announced that they were running out of money for the ACP program. It basically said in February of this year, they're not going to allow people to enter and apply. So no longer can you apply, and they're going to run out of funding by April. It is possible that the government, does what they need to do to refund this program, but it's uncertain, and it's also uncertain how long it's going to happen, and if future government shutdowns or looming, funding issues could cause it to go up and down, which results in a very uncertain future for the people that would be in the program. So, example of what our peers are doing. So, Comcast, for example, offers an Internet Essentials and Internet Essentials Plus tier of service. Which sounds great, but one of the biggest downsides of this program is that if you've had a Comcast internet connection in the last 90 days, then you're ineligible for these rates. So you essentially have to drop your internet connection for 3 months to be able to sign on, and then if you're qualified for all of the criteria that they require. Other MLPs like Shrewsbury have just said, you know what, the burden on the public who are having to apply to these programs and the burden on our staff is just too high for the number of people that are eligible. It's just worth it to offer a subsidy, and they're offering a $20 a month subsidy. So what we're looking at, what we're recommending is a similar thing to what Shrewsbury is doing, which is to say, offer a flat $20 per month reduction in bill cost for any customer who's also receiving the electric rate assistance program. What we do basically is just on the application, well, I just have a box, do you have broadband? Regardless of whether they have it, we kind of think it is the right thing to do just to offer that credit to them. We already know that they qualify, and if they have internet, then we think they should get the credit. There's only 7 people who are on the electric residential rate assistance for electric and who also have broadband. So if we did that $20 a month credit for those 7 people, it would be about $1,680 per year. And we think that this is far less than the staff time required to administer a program. Even if that number jumped to 8, 9, 10, there probably is a break-even point if there were an alternative subsidy. But knowing that the funding strategy is ending and knowing that it's uncertainty for our residents, we feel like that's the right thing to do. What we would do if this was approved is, number one, we need to figure out the logistics a little bit. I have a note into council to figure out, can we just adopt this program? Broadband rates are handled a little bit differently than electric rates in terms of the DPU. So it might not be required to have a rate hearing for something like this, but I want to get just certainty that we're doing this the right way and that we're not going to end up in a situation where we should have done something differently. We'll develop a communication plan for all the public and broadband customers. We'll certainly target those who are on the electric rate assistance program, whether they have broadband or not, and then heavily target the ones who are and just let them know that they're eligible for and will be getting this credit. And then depending on what council tells us, if the board approves this change and there's not a rate hearing required, then we could just make the change instantly. If a rate hearing is required, since we are going to have one in an upcoming meeting for the rec buyback or donation program, we would just put this on the same agenda. So, and I'll just stop sharing and then see if there's any questions or concerns.
That was a
Thank you,
really
Jason.
good summary.
Yeah, that was a very good summary. I think, yeah, I think this is a good idea. I think we should move forward with it, and I think we should promote it to those on the rate assistance for electric that don't have broadband, which you stated you would. Bianca, you had your hand up. Did you have a question or a comment?
It might be, it's a very uninformed question. And if this derails the conversation, just let's not go into it. But I thought, is it possible, we all know we have problems with cell phone connectivity. Would it be tremendously expensive to just have CMLP just blast out free Concord Light Wi-Fi?
Yeah, we're running late, and that is something that would distract if you want to discuss that topic, that's a whole topic in itself.
Bianca, I can send you some information just for background. But yeah, we've talked about things like that. We're looking into it.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the board? Jason, do you need anything from the board today?
Yeah, I mean, I would like it if the board would vote to say that they support this program as presented, and then that way, if council says that a rate hearing is not required, we can pretty much just implement it right away. If one is required, then we'll obviously come back and ask the board to hold a hearing.
Great. Alice, do you mind making a motion?
Sure. I move that we adopt an affordable connectivity program as outlined in the discussion of the March 13th board meeting and presentation from Jason.
Great. Bianca, you want to give a second?
I second.
Great. Bianca,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Alice,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
and I agree as well. So yes, go forth.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, it is 9 o'clock. We have 2 agenda topics. Jason, do you feel either of them needs to be handled today, or should we defer and go to public comments?
The project updates can wait to any subsequent board meeting. It's totally up to you and Bianca and the timing of the meeting. But if we feel like we want to start wrapping things up, we absolutely can do that.
Okay, because well, let me ask this of board members. Are you able to stay on for a half an hour? Is there anyone that needs to drop by 9:30? I don't see anyone saying they need to drop. I do see some public hands up. Carlin, I think I'm going to move on to the topic because we do have the board able to stay. Do you have a comment you want to?
Just very quickly, I applaud your decision on the discount for the broadband and implement it as quickly as possible. Good job. Thank you.
All right, great. So Bianca, our next topic is update from the APPA legislative rally. Would you like to take it from here and share what you've learned?
Sure, yeah, and I'll make this quick. I'll just, for some background, I have, and I think that for whatever reason, the board hasn't historically been connected with the APPA. The CMLP is a member of the APPA. It's the American Public Power Association. It does, it provides resources and legislation and lobbying efforts on behalf of all the MLPs in the United States. And we are members. And I happen to know, or happen to have come on the board with awareness about them because I have two colleagues who work there on the environmental lobbying side. And so I want to make sure everybody knows, like, you can sign up. I will forward, after this board meeting, I will forward an email from the customer service representative. Everyone is welcome to create a login. There's an inordinate amount of resources for everyone in terms of regulatory and legislative efforts and topics of consideration for MLPs. So they hold conferences all year round, again, focused on various topics. Every February, they hold a legislative rally. So I had sent an email around to the board asking, hey, was this something, I'd like to go. Anyone want to come with me? I think it'd be a good informational overview of what's happening out there in the MLP world. And consensus was, go forth and tell us what you find. So I went, and the first day was an all-day meeting, gathering, or workshop on creating boardroom consensus. There was a lot that was discussed. I would say the big takeaway was consensus is the hardest, that what you want to mitigate is groupthink or difficult people, and then everything else in between is the sweet spot. Consensus being, wow, you really knocked it out of the ballpark. The second day was focused, it was all about the legislative efforts and lobbying efforts that the APPA is bringing forth to the Hill. And some of the stuff, I have to say, it was just, I didn't have enough familiarity with the background or what it was. But I will say that I know Alice asked me, to follow up on any cybersecurity issues. I think there was only one piece of legislation that was being lobbied for that was related to cybersecurity. And I sent you, Alice, the woman, the person who is responsible for that. Again, I have very tangential information on that, or knowledge about it. So it was not something that I could really report back with. But Adrienne Lotto is the person to be able to provide that information. And then the bulk of everything else was on, power supply. A lot of it was focused, almost 100%, on, non-emitting power supply. There's been issues in Oregon. Some of the topics were, the heated topics were trying to undo large hydro plants. I think there was one hydro electric plant in California that was I don't know what the word is, like undone. I'm sure there's a technical word for that. Same thing was happening in Oregon, efforts on that part. And then APPA was lobbying against that. And I would say the most significant conversations that I had were related to some of our work related to the task force. Many MLPs, many, almost everyone that I spoke to was also wanting or desiring or working towards building solar arrays. Most of them were doing it in consortium settings. And the biggest hurdles that they were finding were in terms of the funding and securing materials, because a lot of some, and I think I forwarded to you guys some of the funding, there are grants available for this. But the grants also require that all the materials be sourced USA, made in the USA, and that's difficult to verify. No one seems to be willing to sign off on that. And that there's very significant supply constraints. Also, NYPA, I sat with the two people from NYPA, and I'm happy to forward their contact information on, and they said that they would be really glad to help us to share their knowledge base with us related to, you know, our efforts with what the Solar Task Force is doing in building a new solar array. So that's I think that's the short and long of it.
Right?
Oh, Brian, you're muted.
Yeah, I was late to that one. Yes, thank you for that update. That was great. And I would like to know the contacts at NYPA. That's something that I've always known we've had, and know not much more than the memo that I've seen about that agreement that's so old. Any other feedback from the board? All right, well, thank you, Bianca. That was great. I'm gonna go to public comments, public and liaison comments. Is there any comments that anyone would like to share before we adjourn? Pamela.
Pamela 13 Concord Green. Thank you, Bianca, for bringing up the broadband thing. I think we need to talk about that. And I hope that you will expand the rec purchase revenue to be expended on other zero carbon projects, such as the middle school, the other solar projects, battery projects that the town can buy and use. Since I think
we will own the Mass Class 1 that is produced by the middle school system.
yes, but I'm not talking about RECs. I'm talking about Concord can't. In order to decarbonize the energy supply, we have to build decarbonized energy sources. And just buying RECs isn't the same thing, because it doesn't guarantee that that decarbonized energy is actually produced with that money.
Yes, it does.
It doesn't, though. Most of it hasn't.
Sorry, I'll just listen.
It might be a bigger bang for our buck to use the money that we're using for buying RECs to actually buy local systems of green energy production, where we know all of the money is gone towards decarbonized energy production. And
Right.
none has gone to administration or the kind of things that mean that RECs aren't not anymore bundled locally because they're too small, the kind of administration costs.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other public comments? Mary, do you have a comment?
Yeah, very quickly. This has been a great meeting. I've learned so much. It's so refreshing to hear the transparency and the level of communication. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Seeing no other public comments, could I get a motion to adjourn? Alice, you're my motions person.
So moved.
Excellent. And Bianca, can I get a second?
Second.
Great. John,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Alice?
Yes.
And I agree as well. Thank you all.